Hi, welcome to part 6 of the Anatomy of Style in collaboration with ImagineFX magazine. In this segment we'll be drawing the arms, doing a study of the male arms in pronation. Pronation is a study in itself because of the complication of the bones and muscles being twisted and torqued, which changes the entire anatomy of the arm. And you can see that I've drawn for this demonstration the arm in two different positions, and even though the positions are very slight, the change of position, that is, the change in the muscles is extreme, and that's to do with particularly one bone, and that's the radius bone. And the radius bone crosses over the top of the ulna, which is our elbow. And to think about bones actually crossing over each other is a strange idea, considering that they're encapsulated by muscle and flesh. And when I first learned this phenomenon, I was astounded that could be happening underneath all of this architecture. But it does, and it seems like it shouldn't and it couldn't, but it actually does happen. The bones are on a spindle, and that spindle rotates, radiates, and turns one bone over the other. And that's the reason for all of the change, is that muscles are also attached to this bone, and when that bone twists, radiates, turns, it twists all the muscles with it that are attached to it. And a lot of them are heading toward the thumb, and that's where the thumb indicates the side the radius is on. You can see the flat end of the wrist there, for instance. That's the flat end of the radius bone. So the radius is on the thumb side, and the ulna, the elbow, is on the pinky side, and it's that little ball of your wrist is the ulna, and we can see the little pinky finger sticking out there. So let's explore this mystery of particularly the forearms, but the entire arms, because the shoulder, the deltoid, also twists along with this. So let's get started. Okay, here I am with my little peel and sketch general soft charcoal pencil, and we're going to be discussing the three hells, and if you've taken any of my workshops or read my book, The Figures from Life, I talk about this as one of my main philosophies and how to deal with it. And it took me a long time to work out the pitfalls of drawing and why some drawings look stiff while others look fluid. And it's because of these hells. If you fall into them, your drawings can look either floppy or too stiff. So what I like to start with is gesture, because I want to avoid the pitfall of structure hell. If we start too structurally, one box on another box, one tube on another tube, and all those connections, we tend to end up with a stiff drawing because we're not looking at the overall rhythm of motion in the figure. And the arms have a lot of motion, as does the entire figure. So I start with gesture, and you saw me run across the entire arm there, trying to feel the entirety of it as a fluid motion. And that's me in gesture heaven. They're only hells if you get stuck in them. We can be in gesture hell too, where everything's too floppy, we're not thinking about the structure. So here I'm thinking of both, and that's our life's work, how to get both of these things to synchronize. And so when I'm thinking of the arm, I'm thinking of the entire arm. I'm thinking about how it's bigger at the top and gradually becomes a smaller, thinner tube at the bottom. But I'm also thinking of that hinge in the center where the ulna and the radius of the forearms meet the humerus of the upper arm, and how they connect and how they move in synchronicity and become a fluid thing in motion, a hydraulic system. If you ever see those big diggers on the building site and the arm comes out and lifts up with a claw, you can see how that's all been built off the idea of human anatomy. So you saw me there starting to put the structure of the tricep on the left and the bicep on the right as a twin idea, and the triceps up high and the biceps straightened out low here in this position, because the arm is becoming a straighter thing. So as far as measurements are concerned, I see a lot of advice, and Bern Hogarth calls the arm 3 3/4 lengths, and I think of it as 3 1/3. We're not talking about a big difference there, but it's enough, and that my arms work out at that, and they work out well for me. And there's no difference really, I see his arms as a bit long, and he may see my arms as a bit short, but there are long and short arms, so it doesn't really matter. And the measurement here works for me in this respect, that it's simple for me to see the bicep as a head from its entire length, and then another head down to the wrist. And the reason I work with that idea is that it's easy for me to see. I kind of judge that. And there's a problem with the forearm looking longer, because the brachioradialis and the carporadialis longus, they go up higher than the ulna. You can see the ulna coming out as a ridge there, the elbow, very clearly. And so that's the end indicates also the end of the humerus, which is the arm top that goes all the way up to the shoulder. So from the shoulder to the ulna, if you look on the outside, it's actually much longer than the forearm. But the forearm seems longer because of those muscles going up higher and attaching to the humerus top of the epicondyle, that is. And the epicondyle is a big ball end of the humerus, where all those muscles are all attaching to on the side of it. And also when you add the hand at the bottom, which is 2/3 of the head, my idea of how long this is, and also 2/3 of the head above the bicep for the rest of the deltoid, and that's what gives us those 4/3, which means 1 head and 1/3 extra. So 3 1/3 heads for me, as far as the entire length of the arm plus the hand is considered. I've even put the Bern Hogarth in there by accident 3/4. So that stuff's hard to let go. So 2/3 at the top, 2/3 at the bottom, and a head in the middle there. Bicep down to the ulna, and then the ulna down to the top of the wrist. Now the wrist is not the end of your forearm. It's actually, you can see, imagine a sleeve of a tight sort of elasticated sleeve, and you can understand where the wrist is. It's the carpals before the hand, and it's important to understand that because our hand doesn't bend at the end of the forearm, it bends after that. There's 7 carpals in there, little bones that work in union to articulate the hand. Sounds like a pivot on the end of this hydraulic system. So a lot to learn here, and you can see right away just from that short discussion just how difficult it is to understand the arm. And I consider the hand the most complicated part of the entire human anatomy, quickly followed by the forearm, and then followed by the scapula at the top of the arm. So that the entire arm system is, for me, the most complicated part of the human anatomy. So what I'm putting in here is the anconeus. And the anconeus is a little triangular muscle that echoes the ulna, echoes the top of the ulna, which is the elbow, and that attaches on to the humerus bone as well. And I'll bring in the skeleton arm a little later in this so that it all makes sense, but for the moment I want to concentrate solely on the drawing here. So here I'm going to start really getting into the mechanics of this, but as I've stated already, I want to really understand that this is, although it's a study, I never want to let go of my disciplines. When I move from a study to a drawing, I don't want to treat this as just a structural idea and then start drawing the figure in a different way, thinking about gesture again. I want to consider my studies and my drawings as one continuous discipline, and the discipline is that, study or not, I want it to have gesture and movement in it. And there's lots of incredible anatomy books by terrific artists, and what always stunned me was that we could get a terrific artist and they would know everything about anatomy and the structure of it, and then their actual drawings didn't move me at all because they didn't have any gesture in them. So even as I'm doing studies, I'm continuing the idea that this is art. So I'm going to continue with the gesture. Now, of all the things in school that helped me with this idea, it was the technical drawing class. I'm not sure if they changed the name of that idea. It sounds very dry, doesn't it? Technical drawing. They taught you to draw industrial plans, and it was really the only outlet I had for art in school, because they didn't teach art in the school I went to. They just taught this kind of thing, how to get a job. The Greeks would be appalled. The idea of teaching back then was about science and art. I wish it still was. But these trajectory lines across help me plot out this next movement, which is the hand turning and the proportions. So I can concentrate on the gesture of this a lot more. Now this is where things get very complicated, because of the twist of the radius that I've mentioned already. So I got a lot of things going on in my mind here. I've got to make a beautiful drawing, I've got to work out the structure of it, and also I've got to work out the mechanics of it. So I'm drawing those, excuse that going off screen, drawing these lines across these elevation lines to plot out these sizes. Now the shoulder is a huge muscle, and it's the king, the deltoid. It is on top of everything. That's why I always make a note of that the deltoid is king. And the hierarchy of these muscles is that the pectoralis muscles are underneath that, and then the arm muscles are underneath again. So there's incredible stuff going on here all at once, and I want to be aware of all those things. And here is where I'm starting to plot out. That's why I've left that little drawing on the far left there, so you can see where we started. With the arm is always in pronation generally when we stand at our sides, because pronation is when you turn your hand in toward the body, and supination is when your hand is completely flat, like you're holding a bowl of soup. Supination. So if you hold something in your hand, that's when both the bones are side by side, the radius and the ulna. Once we stand with our arms at the side, the bones are starting to cross over, and then when we pull our thumb right in toward our body, say we're going to put our hand flat on a surface, for instance, like the middle drawing there, then the arm is in pronation. It's starting to go into the body, and the bones have crossed. The radius bone has crossed over the ulna, and that's completely. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm crossing that bone over by pulling that thumb in toward the body. Now, as far as reference for this drawing goes, it's multiple. I've got my own drawings, my own studies. I've got various photographs from different magazines, bodybuilder magazines and things like that, and some reference from the New Masters Academy. I'm a member there, and it's just one of the greatest resources there is, well, the greatest resources that I can find in the world for all of this research. And due to the fact that I teach as well at CGMA and my own online schools and also my own private workshops, all of these things come together where I have to have the best information that I can get because I'm imparting it, and so it's a very serious business for me that I impart the information correctly. You know, I'm telling you how this works, so it better, I can't fudge it, and so there's multiple sources going on here, a lot of stuff to bring you the best I can, the best of my knowledge. And so there's no one reference for this. There's multiple. Also Andrew Cross did a terrific anatomical model. I don't have it in front of me at the moment, but it is a beauty, and I have all of those things in front of me during the drawing of this, doing the voiceover after the fact. So there's the Anconius going on there. And learning how to do all these little structural drawings really helps understand the absolute complexity of this business once the flesh goes on top and the muscle underneath and the subcutaneous fat in between. All these things are just confusing the issue. So if you look at my drawing in the center there, you can see it's just a nightmare of detail, and I've really gone to town on that one. But I wanted to show there that, you know, no matter how complicated something gets, it all boils down to these basic shapes. So at the minute there I'm just indicating the flexors, which are under the arm. We're starting to see the underside of the arm here now. And so it's the flexors on the underside and the extensors on the top. And the extensors are what lift your fingers up and down. So if you wiggle your fingers up and down, you'll feel your forearm on the top, especially near the top end where the brachialis muscles are. You'll start to feel the fibers twitch, because these muscles are very short at the top and then become extremely long all the way down to the hand. That's where they're going to. They're all going down to, you know, the carpals and the fingers. You know, the extensor digitorum, which is the main top muscle of your forearm, works all your four fingers. And sorry, your three fingers, and the little finger has its own tendon and muscle. The digiti mini muscle goes in there and works that little finger, and the thumb in its own royal regal way has three pollicis muscles, which are the flat of the wrist really, and they work the thumb. So all of those muscles on top, and they're on the forearm. And the flexors are underneath for bunching your hand into a fist. And they're the really strong muscles. The extensors on the top aren't as strong as the flexors underneath. The flexors are for turning, undoing bolts and screws and things like that. So they're very, very strong muscles, and that's why they bulge so much more. So the way to work these muscles out is to look for the ulna. When you find the ulna bone, which is the elbow and the little ball point on your wrist. Once you find that, that indicates the border between the extensors, the top of the arm, and the flexors underneath the arms. So here I am putting in all of these muscles, and they're very, very tricky. So that main muscle in the center there is indicating the extensor digitorum muscles, and the one across the ulna, quite rightly, is the carpi flexor ulnaris. I have to, hesitate when I'm saying these muscles. I've got no chart or anything in front of me here. I've been doing this long enough not to be forgetting these things, but they do trip you up. So we have the twins, the brachialis and the brachioradialis, or the brachialis is further up the arm. Brachii means arm, and carpi means wrist, and the metacarpals go off of that, and they're the bones of the top of your hand. And meta means beyond, and metacarpal, it's beyond the wrist. So all these strange names all make some kind of sense in Latin. So here we are with this further pronated arm, and you can see already, like I say, keep your eye on the far left, and the middle drawing now is showing you where the basics of all of this are going. So as muscles contract, they shorten. So that's all they can do. Muscles can't do anything else. So when they're active, they shorten. But they can also twist. And this, when the radius, the thumb bone, twists the forearm around, it's also turning the humerus a little bit. So the ball socket of that humerus bone, your shoulder, and you can feel the bone, if you press your fingers into your shoulder, you'll feel that bone quite strongly near the top. That's rotating a little bit inside the socket, the glenoid process socket of the scapula. And so it's twisting the shoulder. And as it does that, and with the arm being straight like this, the tricep, which I'm drawing now, is starting to grow upwards. It's starting to bulge upwards and shorten. So when I say grow, I mean it's going to bulge. It's actually getting smaller in length. So it's shortening, and the tension of the tendons are doing that. And the tricep has a common tendon for all three, and it attaches down here onto the ulna. So you'll find the upper arm muscles generally attached to the bones of the lower arm, and the lower arm muscles attached to the bone of the upper arm. So all of these, and you can see that little circle I've just put in there. That's not the size of the bone of the ulna, or sorry, the humerus. That's just the only part of the bone that's left to see after all these muscles attached to the side of it. And that used to really throw me off. I thought that was a tiny, tiny little bone, and it's actually quite a big bone. They're called epicondyles, and that's a lateral epicondyle, which is the outer side. So lateral means outside, and medial means toward the middle of the body. So your funny bone, the inside of your elbow, is what you knock. And as you're a kid, you tended to knock that a lot. And I don't know why we laughed, but we did laugh with pain. And that's the medial epicondyle. So basically the humerus comes down as almost like a ratchet, like a spanner, and grabs onto the ulna. And the ulna's like a hinge. And it goes back and forth. And when the arms straighten like this, all the bones lock up and into a straightish line, and so the epicondyle, lateral epicondyle, that little dot that we see there, seems higher, but it continues on down as a ball, and all those muscles are attaching onto it. So we're just seeing a bit of it peeking through. And as the elbow straightens, it wrinkles, because there's a bit of loose skin there to enable it to bend the arm without, the skin tearing, which it would do if it was tight. So understanding all the mechanics of this really helps a lot in working out this gnarly business. So let's have a look at this deltoid. So you can see right away that the deltoid is changing shape quite a lot here, and it twists just like a towel, because the connection point where it attaches onto the humerus, and remember this whole bone is inside there, and that little connecting point down the bottom, and once again the mnemonic for this, I think of a hot air balloon, and that's the little basket. So that little basket connects to the side of the humerus bone. That is also the start of the brachialis muscle, which is the muscle in between the triceps and the biceps, which a lot of artists leave out, don't really understand it. And you might even think it's just that the shape that we see there, but it's actually right underneath the biceps, and it's a stronger muscle. When we lift something, we're really lifting it with the brachialis and the bicep helping out. But we see just a part of it, and it's that line in between, and it's a good connection point. We don't always see it on a model. I can see why artists leave it out, but there should be at least some indication of it as a slight shadow somewhere. So you can see on the left arm that there's been a considerable change here on the tricep. Look in the center drawing again. You can see that the tricep is changing shape, and the deltoid also along the side, the posterior side of it, which means back, is starting to twist forward because the humerus bone is pulling it. They're all stuck onto this bone, generally anyway. the long heads of the long head of the tricep, which is the outer side, attaches to the scapula, and as does the biceps. They're attaching up onto the scapula as well. In fact, the biceps don't attach to the humerus at all. They go down to the radius, and then they attach as long strings up onto the scapula, which is your shoulder back, your wing muscles on the back of your shoulders. But that's getting out of the idea of drawing here. That's more of an interest thing. It interests me to understand how all these things work. So here we go. The triceps, it's 3 muscles. We generally only see 2 of them, but we do see a little bit of the medius poking out on the side, and definitely around the inside we see it. But generally the triceps just look like 2 big balloon muscles. There's nearly always one more muscle underneath all these muscles. So here we go now. We've got the carpi radialis longus and the brachioradialis muscle as the twins. And then in the middle we have the digitorum group, and then on the outside we have the carpi ulnaris. So basically 3 lumps there. But in between those lumps we have smaller muscles, usually they're called brevis muscles, smaller, brief muscles. And they help with the striations, but best to keep in mind the bigger picture as always. And think about this, once again, like a twisted towel. These guys are attaching onto that humerus bone at the top, and as the radius twists around on a pivot, on a little spindle underneath that ulna bone, they're on little spools, in fact, strangely, they almost look like spools that you put thread on. They really are very strange. Look like they've been engineered in a factory. And as that little pivot turns, it pulls all of those muscles in that twisted towel fashion. So once again, look in the center drawing, and you can see the change there as we turn the arm around. Now down, as we travel down the arm, I'm just doing the carpi ulnaris flexor, which is the underside of the arm. It pokes on. We see the back of it, as we see also the long head of the tricep at the back poking out. So there go round the back, and we see their ridges over the top. That's why understanding overlaps is so important. If we only think about outlines, then we don't understand that this is one thing on top of another. And when you think of one thing on top of another, you've got depth, or the illusion of depth, on a 2D surface. And now look at the length of the forearm. Now it's starting to become very complicated, and a lot more sophisticated, and therefore a lot more beautiful. We've got the brachialis, and then the brevis, the extensor brevis of the longus muscles create a second ridge, and then another set of muscles come into play. They're called pollicis muscles, and they work the thumb, and they're on top of that really flat little 2x4 structure. It looks like a little plank of wood that you get from a hardware store. And that's actually the shape of the radius with the pollicis muscles on top. So the radius is a very flat blade at the bottom, and the ulna, you can see, is a very easy to spot little ball. It's a little wrist bone, and that's why I always thought anyway, that the wrist was that. Well, that ball is, which the wrist is below that, the carpals. So if you hold your little ulna in your hand, grab what we call our wrist since childhood, and then move your hand, you'll see that there's nothing moving. Everything moves below that, and that is the actual wrist moving below. That's the carpal mass. 7 little bones in there. So the bones come down in order nicely. So we've got the humerus bone at the top. That's 1 bone. Then we've got the radius and the ulna, that's 2 bones, and then we've got the carpals, and they come in as 3 and then 4. And then we've got the metacarpals, which is 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if there's only 4 carpals, how do we end up with 5 metacarpals coming off them? Well, the answer is the little pinky finger is sharing the last carpal with the ring finger, and so it pops out at an angle like that. That's the reason for that angle. So that's something to be aware of, that the little finger's a maverick. It comes out at a strange angle because it's on the edge of a bone, whereas the other fingers are coming down off of the bone, straighter. Nothing's ever entirely straight. So here we are. I'm working on the side here now of the flexors. So we're underneath the arm now. So we've got two flexors here, two main flexors really. We've got the carpio ulnaris and we've got the palmar longus. And further round there, because it's twisted right round, we have the radialis flexor. So the palmar longus and the radialis muscles are what give us the little fibers, the little flexors, tendons right there on the wrist. And a lot of people don't have the not a lot of people, 15% they say of the population don't have a palmar longus muscle. That's an evolutionary thing, and so you'll either have one tendon or two tendons on your wrist. So just pull your hand in toward your body and feel just down at the bottom towards your wrist. Feel those two tendons. You might only have one right in the center, and that might be because you're missing a palmar longus. And the palmar longus is so weak it's not really needed. And as just a point of interest, if you ever need any plastic surgery, they'll pull out that palmar longus and use it to grow a nose, perhaps, because we don't really need it, but it's part of your DNA, so it can be used. So your palmar longus, a very weak muscle, and we can do without it. So, getting off the idea of drawing here, because it fascinates me so much, anatomy and how it all works, that I can go off on a tangent. So here we are again, going in with the triceps, and knowing these basic shapes is really important because, like I say, with subcutaneous fat and fiber tissue and everything, these shapes start to become so complicated they no longer look like the basics anymore, unless you squint your eyes. And that's why I'm keeping those basics in the center there for you to see. So the tricep, even though it's underneath the deltoid, it's still pressing into it. All these muscles have to move aside for each other. And the tricep is bunching now. And with the turn of the humerus, the deltoid is doing exactly the same as the extensors down below. It's starting to twist like a towel, because these muscles are attached to bone. That deltoid's attached to the acromion process of the scapula in the center and around the back, and it's also attached to the clavicle here on the front, which is our collarbones. And those bones are movable. A lot of bones in the body are flexible to a degree, in the fact that they can turn, but they can't really change their shape that much. In fact, they can't, apart from costal cartilage of the chest, which aren't really bone, and the cartilage of the nose, which isn't really bone either. But the actual bones themselves, they're solid. So the muscle has to adjust to the bone. If the bone moves, the muscles have to turn with the bone. So the muscles are flexible, and the bones really aren't. And so that's why we're seeing flex. It's obvious, we flex our muscles. So there's that little epicondyle lateral of the humerus at the bottom. So the bones usually are big at one end and smaller at the other end. So the humerus bone at the top, the ball of our shoulder, is very big, and then it becomes smaller down at the bottom. It's not that small though. The part we see there is just peeking through. And the ulna is big at the elbow and then small at the wrist. And the radius is the opposite. It's small at the top where it attaches to the humerus, and then it's big at the bottom where it becomes the flat side of your wrist. So when you put your fingers on your wrist, you're basically all radius, and then you'll just touch the edge of your ulna. So very big. The radius is the king of the forearm, and the elbow is the hinge. So the elbow, the ulna, comes into play when we hinge our arms. And to prove that the lower arm is, even though it doesn't seem to be, is shorter than the upper arm, just basically bring your hand up to your shoulder in a bicep curl, and you'll see that the wrist falls short of the top of the shoulder. So keeping that in mind, and not to draw too long a forearm. So once again, think of the forearm as where the elbow edge is there, and then from there up to the top of the shoulder is the entire length of the upper arm. And then the forearm does, proves itself to be shorter. But like I say, it's easier for me to measure in two parts, and so I think of the top of the brachialis, where it attaches to the side of the tricep. I consider that down to the top of the wrist as half, and then from there to the top of the shoulder as another half, and that makes me work that out very quickly. And as you can see from the very beginning, it's worth playing these things back as well. That when I was plotting this arm out, I was thinking of it like that, a holistic thing, a large thing, and I was able to gesturally draw that arm in as two parts to begin with. So my philosophy of big to small, get the big picture in first, and then the smaller picture comes in after. And on that note, we're getting very small now, because we're starting to actually look at the flexation of the flesh as well, and what the pressure of these muscles against this flesh, what's it doing to the flesh as well. So the muscles are changing their shape, and so is the flesh to accommodate the muscle pressurizing. So the creases we see in the underarm there are due to the turn of the arm, and also the pressure of the deltoid against the pectoralis chest muscles, because that little string we see coming off of the underneath of the deltoid is actually the pectoralis muscles of the chest attaching to the humerus as well. So that's attaching underneath the deltoid. And when you see the deltoid starts to get thin at its little mnemonic basket as it attaches in there, as it twists, all these things have to accommodate. And the bicep goes way up underneath. So I think of the bicep, you can see the little line I've drawn across there to measure a head. The bicep's going underneath that deltoid. It doesn't finish there. These things aren't just right next to each other. Some are underneath, and the biceps underneath, they attach way up as a string onto the scapula, like I've said before. And biceps, there's two of them, so there's two strings, one going up onto the scapula, and the other one going inside to attach lower down on the scapula. So there's a lot of stuff going on. Coracoid process is where the smaller bicep goes. So the longer head is the one further toward the back as we go around the arm, and then the long head of the bicep is further around the back too. So if you want to think out what the longer parts are, just go from the front to the back, and as we go around, we're thinking of longer. So the bicep attaches the coracoid process, which is a little finger that comes through from the back of the scapula into the front. So the scapula is coming right through, even though we only think of it as a backbone, because that's all we really see of it. But there's a little finger there, the coracoid process, and it has another little muscle underneath the arm there that goes onto that as well. Coracoid brachialis muscle goes in there. So remember, brachii is arm. Now, what I'm plotting out here is the rhythm of the muscles, and that helps me a lot in keeping the drawing gestural, because gesture for me is king in a drawing. It's what makes the drawing alive. And so all these muscles have to push other things aside, and so they're kind of rhythmic. They're similar to each other. So I'm thinking here very strongly now of the ulna bone and the flexors pulling across it, we see a little top of the ulna bone, the actual carpi ulnaris extensor, just pulls on top of that. And they all come down to the hand. That's why they're called carpes. They come down to the carpal, down to the wrist, and to the hand as well. So that's the wrist I'm doing there. It's that little curve. I'm doing just a touch of the metacarpal of the thumb, and a little striation of the pollicis tendons. The pollicis tendons are on the thumb, remember? And the pollicis muscles are on the flat of the top end of the wrist there, at the end of the arm. You see why that's often confused as the wrist, because we think of it as the wrist, the flat plane. So the carpals are in the groove between the arm and the hand. Now, I wasn't thinking of drawing the hand in this, but I realized in this whole set of workshops we hadn't really worked on the hand, because it's so complicated that it really deserves a workshop of its own. And so we would have really needed 9 workshops for this to put the hand in, or it would have probably worked out as 10 better, and draw the head too. That'd be for other workshops, I guess. It's all complicated enough. But since I was here, I thought, you know what, I never draw the hand in these demos because there's never enough time. But there is time in this one, as it's a study. So I should have plotted this out a little bit better. So on the fly, I've decided I'm going to do it. I'm going to draw the hand, and rather than just have it fade out as an arm demo on the hand, it's just a ghost, as it is in the center part there. So I could have done these fingers a little longer. So the way to measure the fingers is to go from the end of the arm, start there where the wrist starts, and measure down to the knuckle, the center of the knuckle. And that'll give you half a hand. And then from the center of the knuckle down to the longest finger is the entire hand. Once again, that's a basic. Some people have short fingers, some people have long fingers. But that's a basic idea there. And I'm grouping these 2 fingers just for style. The reference is the various references that I'm looking at don't actually have them grouped like that. So, and forgive me for getting off the page there as I'm working. So these little fingers coming together are just a stylistic idea, and they work for a reason, because if you hang your hand on relaxed, you'll find that the 2 middle fingers do come together generally, and that's a total relaxed hand. And of course the little finger is coming off at an angle because it's got that metacarpal share with the ring finger, so it has to come out a little bit. So you'd have to physically push your little finger inwards to stop that happening. So a relaxed hand has that coming out. So relax your hand, flop it around a little bit, and then look at it, and you'll see that the 2 middle fingers gravitate toward each other. And all the fingers bow in a little bit. And these things are so subtle it's hard to see them to begin with. You have to really think hard on that and study it. So coming up the wrist again, and seeing the hierarchy of these muscles. So there's the brachialis and the radialis longus. And then the brevis is the next step down, and then the pollicis muscles after that, and then the wrist. So here I'm working on the overlaps, and the overlap of the brachialis over the bicep. So always remember that the brachialis is in front. From this angle, if we turn the arm around, then the biceps will be in front from another angle, but from the outside, generally how we see the arm, then the brachialis is always in front. So be aware of that, and it'll stop us doing outlined figures which become flat figures. Same with the ulna there, the elbow. It's called the olecranon, this little part on top, which is basically bursa and cartilage and all that kind of business. But you see how I've overlapped it over the flexor on the underside, because I want you to be aware of that. That's what's happening. And I left a little bit of air in between there, because I want this to be a stylistic drawing. There's enough said there if you don't understand that. Once again, my philosophy is that, study or not, I want to keep my hand attuned to the fact that everything should be a continuation of my style and progress, and the beauty of drawing the figure shouldn't be forgotten. And so now we're working with a very important idea to show depth and form and the illusion of dimension, and that's the core shadow, the corner of the muscle from a lit direction that can change as the light moves. So at the moment here we're seeing the core from a light that's about 2 or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And if it was from above, then we'd see different core shadows. So there's corners everywhere because it's a rounded object or a square object. So I'll put those cores in just to feel the volume now. We're thinking of volume. So once again, look in the center and you see the structure. Look at the front drawing, we still see a little bit of the gesture in there. And now we're seeing all this stuff on top, the complications on top. So from simple to complex, my philosophies throughout these workshops, you'll see all coming into play again. If I'd have started out trying to draw the complexities that I'm drawing now, right here, it would just be a puzzle that's almost impossible to solve unless you've got genius level going on, you know. And we wouldn't be able to do it so quickly either. And not that time is something I'm concerned about. But time is a concern if you're an illustrator, for instance. And also, if you take too long over something, it stiffens the drawing. So I'm trying to keep a good rhythm of gesture, the flow of knowledge, really, if you want to put it like that. The flow of knowledge is the fact that because I'm understanding these shapes, I'm able to draw them with more fluidity. And fluidity comes with movement. So we're moving slowly, then we're moving chunkily and clunkily, and we want to take that chunk and clunk and put it away, you know. And the way to do that is to draw often and draw gesturally often. And so we understand this stuff so well that we go, okay, there's that shape and there's this shape, because we can't be gestural with something we don't understand. If we're thinking structure, then we're not thinking gesture anymore. So we understand the structure so well that we can become gestural on top is the idea. And you'll hear me say that a lot. So here, you know, I find the gestures in the smallest places. You know, that gesture of the deltoid and the pectoralis interacting with each other is a beautiful little moment there. And there's gesture in the bones, the gesture of the clavicle there. So this little triangle that I've just drawn, there's a very important landmark. That's called the infraclavicular fossa. I know that's a mouthful, but a fossa is basically a hollow. And that little hollow we'll find in the inside of the arm as well, and other places. So that infraclavicular fossa is where the deltoid attaches to the first third of the clavicle, and where the pectoralis attaches to the third heading toward the sternum of the rib cage, and that leaves us a little gap in the middle for these muscles to interact without crushing each other, because the arm has a huge range of motion, as you know. You know, we can pull it right across to the, you know, under her neck and behind her back and across her chest and round underneath our back. We can bring that arm and turn it all over the place. So we need some give in there, and that little faucet does it for us. So here we are. As we go over the drawing many times, we start to see the complexities and start to get in smaller. And I'm reiterating the idea of form shadow or core shadow, whatever one. They're both the same, mean the same thing. Corner, I think core is a better explanation because it actually tells you it's a corner of something. So I like that better than form as an explanation of these shadows on the corner of something. But I like to chase them as a rhythm, right down. I'm chasing rhythms here, which was a very complex idea, a very sophisticated idea in drawing. And I was not aware of it for many years. And I learned it from great masters like Glenn Vilpo and Steve Houston, and before that Michelangelo. because those guys, they really understand how this stuff works. And when you see artists that you admire, when I was younger I couldn't understand. It was a mystery to me why I admired them, but I knew what I liked. And it was for these reasons, which I didn't understand. And now I do. So once again, I've created a rod for my back. I started a hand that I wasn't really going to draw, and so I left it really in a very schematic idea. And now I'm going to have to fix that, because I've decided I'm going to draw it after all. So here I am in danger territory. We talk about the hells. The gestural hell can make your drawings floppy because you're not aware of structure, and structural hell makes it stiff. Now before I get on with that render hell, which I was about to talk about, let's have a look at these bones. So the ulna, you can see, is higher up, and the radius, there it is, crossing over. It looks like the ulna is crossing over there, but it's the radius that does it. This is a really crappy little skeleton here, but there's your idea. So that epicondyle is what we see, and as that little dot, and the ulna is the little hinge that we have coming out, and you can see that all of that lines up now, and they can see the full understanding of that. So back to this hand. So render hell is what I was about to talk about. So when you get that little paper stump out and start blending, you could very well start to move the drawing and all the structure very slowly to a point where you're not even understanding that you're changing things, and that's render hell. Render hell can, it's the worst hell, because as you render you start to lose the holistic idea because you're working in parts. So even if I'm working in the small parts of these fingers here, I'm getting gestural. I'm still gestural in there, and this is for the first time you see me using the detail hand, because the detail hand I only use for an area so small that the radiation or the rotation of my carpal bones and my wrists are enough to still give me gesture. And when there's not enough movement there, then I'm in structural hell because I've stopped being gestural. So I'm turning the pencil a little bit under as I get into the bigger parts, and back up again into the writing grip for the smaller stuff. So I'm always thinking gesture. I'm thinking, how can I gesturally draw these small things? And that comes from knowledge as well. Like every bone in the phalanges of the finger here. So the bones of the finger are called the phalanges. And the knuckles are where they meet. So there's 3 of them. And so they butt against each other. And where those knuckles are, and another thing to remember is the knuckles aren't, they're not straight across. They're ranged so that if you put your fingers together you can see that your knuckles are in different positions so that you can carry water in your hand. If the knuckles are all together, then there'd be gaps. So be aware of that first of all. And these knuckles, they become wide at that point, and they get less wide as they get down because the knuckles get smaller. And as we get down to the fingertips, the end of the last bone is a very thin bone. It's a very pointed, like a pencil end almost, a little thicker. And that bone means that the finger is gradually, even though you might not see it to start with, it's gradually getting thinner as we go down. And so I bulge the finger at every knuckle, and less so down toward the fingertip. And also the nail of the finger comes out wide. It doesn't go in thin with the idea of the bone being thin. So a lot to think about there as you're drawing. Now the thumb only has 2 phalanges and 1 big metacarpal, but you can just still think of that as 3 units, and the thumb also comes off at an angle too. So if that's not enough, then you got these veins on top. And how do you place them? Well, not everybody's veins are the same, but they're in this kind of same order because every vein is heading down to 1 finger each, near enough. And so I always think of that, and the veins trying to traverse around the side of a knuckle. So I try and draw these things with all of that in mind, these hands, so that they're no longer the terrible mystery that they used to be. And we're not seeing the because it's a relaxed hand, we're not seeing the extensors work, the tendons of the extensors that are coming down to these fingers. So we don't get that dynamic that you get when if you pull your fingers upwards, you'll start to feel all those metacarpals and start to see them, but they're less visible here. So veins are what's giving me some dynamics. That's why I'm working on those veins, to give it interest. So here we are, and we're getting I could finish, say the drawing's done now, there's enough information there. But since this is a study, I'm looking at various references, mostly a couple of photos from the New Masters Academy, and but I'm looking at bodybuilders as well. Now, I don't like to study the bodybuilders for an arm, because everything's just too out of whack. There's too much bulge, too much thickness going on. I prefer a leaner model. That's why I'll often just use myself as a model, because there's actually, the muscle hierarchy makes more sense on a normal person. It's more what we're used to seeing. And so this Anconius, for instance, is very, very pointed there. I can get lost on a bodybuilder. We don't see so much of it because everything's bulging around it. So you can see all the fibers here as a rhythm. And now I'm going in with more knowledge. So if we look over to the far left now, we still have all that knowledge as a ballpark idea. And I would say study those drawings and draw them over and over for the breakdowns. And that's what those drawings are called, breakdowns. And then come in for the render afterwards. So these 3 steps here, we can see I've left them there. And they're very, very important to get to this point, because this is where you would be in terrible render hell if you didn't have all that structure underneath. And you'd be in gesture hell if you didn't have the structural knowledge. Everything would be wobbly, and you'd run out of room for one thing and fudge another thing on top. Some muscles would get bigger than the others because you're concentrating on them too much, and then you'd leave not enough room for the next one, and then you start, fudging out something else, and before you know it, the whole thing falls apart. So we need both. We need the gesture, and we need the structure before we have any render. So we need to avoid render hell like the plague. So render too soon, and it's almost certainly going to be the end of your drawing as far as a solid fluid thing goes. And so we're render now, finally, because we're trying to stay out of that hell. We're in render heaven. So I don't want to be negative with the word hell, but I think we have to say hell in order to frighten ourselves enough to keep this discipline alive throughout and enjoy it too. Discipline doesn't mean you're in jail. I see discipline as freedom. That's how I think of discipline. Turn that idea on its head, and you'll realize it's the truth. If you're disciplined enough to get your gesture and your structure in order, coming into render, it's a joy. And so I avoid it as much as possible, because you can fall asleep doing it and start to lose track of everything. And render is very soft as well. So when you're rendering too soon, you can't really see what you're drawing anymore. Because, with all the muscle and fat and flesh, it takes away the structure to the point where it's a mystery. The average person, this is magic, that we know any of this. Because they only see the surface. And a lot of artists only see the surface too. And we used to call them surface painters. They're not aware of what's underneath. And so they get confused. And it happens all the time. And like I say, discipline's freedom. And so now I have the freedom to really enjoy this render. So just coming in there with a little bit of pencil eraser. So see all these erasers, and they're pencil shaped, and they have a little brush on the end, which is terrific. And you can go in and really highlight things. And I'm just bringing a little bit of charcoal in there just to bring the arms forward using contrast. So the front of the arm is in light, and to further bring it into light, you must put a dark behind it. You don't have to, but it helps. And there's my little chamois there that just powder dusted back, so it's not overwhelming the whole thing. I want these studies to look like beautiful things as well. So you notice I haven't erased anything at all. I use the eraser as a drawing tool, and so the eraser is for highlights. So like I say, the disciplines are freedom. I'm free from having to think about errors with all this knowledge. So you'll hear it in those really corny shows, Crash Bang, What a Car Crash, or something like that. Knowledge is power. It's just exploitation, for those shows. But here, knowledge is really power. It really is. If you've got the knowledge, you'll have the power to relax and draw. And that's what we all want. We want to have no fear in our drawing. Because remember, once again, my philosophy is that if you draw with fear, your drawing will look fearful. If you draw with anxiety, it'll look like an anxious drawing. If you're bored, it'll be a boring drawing. If you're informed, it'll be an informed drawing. And if you're loving what you do, it'll be a lovely drawing, and people will admire it, and you'll enjoy doing it, and everything's great. The world is a beautiful place for an artist in that position, and that's where we fight to be, and it's a fight worth fighting for, whether you're a professional artist or you just love art. I don't do this for money anymore. I have done for a long time because I'm a working person. I haven't been gifted wealth, and so this has made me my live-in. But I don't worry so much about that anymore, because I find that if you love your work, they say you'll never work another day in your life, but we do. We have to. But I no longer worry about that too much, because if you enjoy your drawing, that'll follow. As long as you're not just drawing as a hermit at home without showing anybody your work. So you've got to get out there and show your work if you want to make a living at this business. But thinking about art as a business at all is a dangerous idea, I think. We got to think of it as something we've loved, since our childhood, or since whenever. You can fall in love with art at any age, and the idea is to draw with that love. I don't want to sound like a politician there. As far as business is concerned, it is a business too, the business of art, because we've got to live. But always think of the art first. It's probably the long way around to what I'm trying to say there. Okay, and you can see now that this is, it's very, very in-depth study here now. Nobody really looks like that. It's like a flayed model. But it helps me understand that when I come in to draw any kind of model now, that I have a thorough understanding of what's underneath. And if these, if we get a plumper person, the basic shapes are still there, and I can work with them. If I get a very, very lean model, which terrifies a lot of artists that don't understand anatomy, then I can deal with that just as well and enjoy it, the main thing. So I want to finish off with the hand here, because we know we don't always get to draw it, especially in live draw. It would take you as long to draw the hand as it would the entire body. So I've got the time here now, and just thinking about once again, the rhythm, even from the ulna down to the carpals. We get little wrinkles as we twist our hand. You may just move your wrist back and forth and see those wrinkles at the carpals. Pull your hand, the palm of your hand, the back of your hand towards your face now, and twist back and forth left and right, and look at those wrinkles below the ulna, before the hand, and you can see that's where all the carpals are. So that'll wrinkle and turn. And like I say, these veins are trying to make their way down past those knuckles. So even though I don't have full reference for this stuff, I can work it out. And you look at these, people that draw hands every day, like Jack Davis, he was just a cartoonist, it's just a cartoonist, brilliant art form. What I mean is he didn't study anatomy every day like I do. He drew hands from his imagination like nobody could, which is brilliant. Okay guys, so there we are. We've done our study of the arms, and like I say, the forearm and the twist of that deltoid especially, look at the difference there between both of those arms now, and you can really understand what I'm talking about. Go back and forth with your eyes and see that tricep bunch up higher, and on the other side relaxed, and see how the bicep on the right is turned around toward the body, so we no longer see as much of it, and see the real turn of that forearm, which is the main study here. And look how the tensor of the tricep tendon is really tugging with all its fibers against that ulna bone as it tries to stay there when the radius is pulling it away, or trying to anyway. It's the humerus that's moving at the top there, and all that beautiful sort of baseball shape of the carpi ulnaris flexor against the brachialis twins up there, and the towel-like twist of that entire thing. And you can see the ulna way on the outside now on the right there, and there it is on the left on the other side. It's completely turned over. How did that happen? It's all to do with that radius. As we twist that radius across that ulna, it's pulling the whole forearm around. And there you can see the wrist as well, down below the radius. Radius can sometimes look like the ulna. So remember, the ulna is on the little finger side, the radius is on the thumb side. And you see the majesty of the hand now. I think of it as on a man like that. It's a very weighty thing. So it's been a joy once again, guys, drawing for you, and hopefully with you if you're drawing along. And looking forward to next issues, issue 7. And just one more to go after that. So I hope you're getting a lot of knowledge here. It's been wonderful drawing for you and putting my thoughts down. And so until next time, the best of luck to you, and good luck with your art.